Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. We are excited to have all of us with you today for this eSignet workshop. I am Rachik Sharma, product owner eSignet. Joining with me are the key members of the eSignet team. We have with us Anusha, our architect, Arvind, our lead developer, and Zishan, our senior developer. Together, they'll be guiding us through the session. We are also joined by our senior leadership. We have Ramesh Narayan, our CTO, and we have Sasi Kumar Ganeshan, our head of engineering, with us today. We are also joined by our MOSIP product team for this workshop. So we'll start. Through most of our previous sessions, we have discussed extensively about eSignet and its features. But today we'll take a step forward with live solution building. We'll do the coding in real time. And then we'll show how can we integrate eSignet very quickly and easily with any of your systems. So before we deep dive into today's session, let me give you a preview of what's in store for today. In today's session, we will demonstrate how seamlessly eSignet can be integrated and it can be enabled for ID verification and authentication. And we will do this specifically by creating a simple portal live. Then we will run the eSignet on our local machines. We'll show you how we can set up eSignet and run it on local machines. And after that, we will demonstrate how we can integrate eSignet with that portal. And finally, we'll guide you through one end-to-end flow where we'll see how all of this looks together when the integration is done with the service portal. So, and after that, we'll open it for Q&A. However, we encourage you all to ask questions as and when you feel like. Please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A drop box, and we'll try to answer as we go ahead. Also, please note that this session is being recorded, and the recording for this session will be available shortly after the session has ended. So, with that note, I hope that we will have an interactive and insightful session today. And I'll hand it over to Anusha, Zishan, and Arvind, our tech team, to take us through the session. Anusha, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachit. Hello, everyone. Happy to see you all here. I already see a hand raised. Okay. So you want to
Hey,
tell
can you hear
something?
me?
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't see that chat box enabled for me. I don't know to drop the questions.
oh, okay. I think Rachik or you could take care of this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Also, are we going to cover anything that like how we can integrate it with MOSIP?
Okay. Today's workshop, we have only planned for relying party integration, Molali, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yeah.
If that is a requirement or that is a need, we can also plan for that workshop for integrating
Ye-
eSignet with MOSIP identity system.
Yeah. Because
We'll take
we
that as
have
a
set up, yeah, we have set up our sandbox quite for a long time, and we were just seeking few helps for even one of them is eSignet. So yeah,
sure.
yep,
We'll be happy to
yeah.
do that.
Thank you.
I think our product
Yeah,
team
yeah,
can
sure,
plan that for you.
sure, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. Okay. Hello everyone. Happy to see you all here. Um, Today's workshop, as already mentioned multiple times, we are going to see how easily we could integrate a relying party portal with eSignet. Um, and for this workshop, we are going to use all the eSignet resources from release 15x branch of eSignet repository. Can I request Vishan to share the screen? Vishan? Yeah. So this is a branch from where we are actually picking all the Docker Compose file, Postman collection. to showcase in this workshop. Let's start with the Docker Compose itself. This is a straight and a quick way of bringing your eSignet service, bring up an eSignet service locally in your machine. In this Docker Compose, we have tried integrating eSignet and eSignet UI with mock identity system. eSignet here is loaded with mock identity plugin, which is integrating with the mock identity system. It is a very simple, straightforward Docker Compose file, nothing complicated. Along with this Docker Compose, in the same folder, you could see the README file, which will guide you through how we could bring up the Docker Compose and what are the other steps that you could follow after bringing up the eSignet application, eSignet, the whole eSignet solution, right? So I think the Docker Compose is done. We have our services up and running in just a minute. So let's now verify our eSignet service and eSignet UI, if at all it is all functioning fine, so that it is easier for us to move forward. The Swagger URL that you just now saw is actually copied from the README file. And please notice that eSignet service is running on port number 8088. And with this Swagger URL, we are sure that our eSignet service is up and running. Let's now also cross-check our eSignet UI. eSignet UI is hosted on port number 3000. Everything is localhost. Complete thing that we're going to showcase today in our workshop is localhost. Okay. So the landing page of eSignet UI, which is hosted on port number 3000, is actually displaying the list of well-known endpoints that we expose from our eSignet service. All these well-knowns are standard well-known endpoints according to OpenID Connect protocol. This well-known endpoints actually helps any OIDC client to discover the other endpoints that is required by the client to interact with the authorization server, in our case, eSignet service. Main important things that usually OIDC clients looks for is the authorization endpoint, token endpoint, and the user info endpoint that are listed in this well-known OpenID configuration endpoints. Okay. Now with this, we are all set up with the eSignet. We are ready to start with relying party application development. So for the sake of time, what we have done is let me first of all tell what is our tech stack that we have chosen for the relying party portal building. We have chosen to use React framework for the UI itself. And the relying party portal itself, I can divide it into two components, the UI component and the backend component. The UI component, as I told you, we have chosen React framework to develop with. And the backend component, we have chosen the Python with Flask. So we will be running a Python application in the backend, which will help us do the backend delegation work that is required from the relying party portal. So the relying party portal, we have tried keeping it very simple. We thought we will only have two pages. One is a login page and the other one is a profile page. Even before starting with the page development, one important library that we would like to use in our React app is our sign in with eSignet button plugin, which is a plugin built by MOSIP team. We are just adding a script tag of that in our index HTML file. You can see that it's a localhost 3000 because the plugin itself is hosted from the eSignet UI, whether it is local or a production deployment. In both the cases, the sign in with button plugin JavaScript library will be hosted from eSignet service itself, eSignet UI itself. You can simply configure the index HTML to use the same JS file. So we have loaded our JS file with a script tag. Let's start with the login page development. We'll create a login.js file. And this login.js file is a simple page where we will have a sign in with eSignet button displayed in the center. So it means that we will have to get the sign in with eSignet button plugin component initialized in this page with the required parameters. we'll see how that is getting, how is the init method of that plugin invoked from this page. What we are creating now is a simple div element where the button will be placed. We are giving a unique ID so that when we are initializing the plugin, we will be using this unique ID to initialize the plugin with. It is a simple render button function that we are going to write inside the use effect. And inside the render button function is what we will be initializing our plugin, our sign in with eSignet plugin. So with the window component is what we are trying to access the sign in with eSignet button reference object on which we are calling the init method. Three main important parameters for our init method for this plugin is OIDC config, button config, and sign in element. So sign in element itself is actually will only need the HTML element where the sign in button should itself be placed. And coming to the button config, as the name says, it is more of dealing with the styling configuration of the button. We have bunch of styling options. We have mentioned all these styling options in our storybook. I think shortly we will share the a link of this storybook as well. The link of the storybook is already available on our eSignet docs, where we have clearly told about what is a available button config and OIDC configuration. We're just copy pasting the default values as is in our example relying party application. Let's take a moment to see through these parameters that we are passing in the OIDC config and button config. In the button config, as you can see, it's a label which is changeable based on the need, shape, theme, and the type. And there are other types and themes that we already support, which is clearly mentioned in our storybook. Coming to the OIDC config, these are standard OIDC parameters that an authorized endpoint needs to even start the OIDC flow with any authorization server. So these are all standard OIDC query parameters, authorized endpoint query parameters. Important things are ACR values, which is clearly telling what is the assurance level or what is the auth factor that the end user should authenticate himself with. As you can see, it's a space separated list of auth factors. It means that we will be able to provide multiple auth factors, which actually gives an option to the end user to choose among these listed auth factors. For the sake of this demo, we will be limiting it to generated code alone. Generated code deduces to only OTP-based authentication. Generated code is OTP-based authentication. Biometrics, as the name itself suggests, it's an biometrics-based login. And the authorized URL is actually the endpoint where our eSignet is being hosted. We will be changing it shortly when we go to the configuration step. But other things are very straightforward. Display, nonce, prompt. Those are standard query parameters. Redirect URI here is actually the callback URL. What is a callback URL? To understand the callback URL, we should actually we'll actually need to see the authorization code flow itself. Authorization code flow, I think most of you are already aware. Just for others who are very new. So authorization code flow involves a flow where a user is taken to the authorization server and he's authenticated and he gives his consent. Once the consent is provided, authorization server will immediately not return back the user info. Instead, it will only return the grant or the authorization code to the user via a redirect URL, which is nothing but the callback endpoint or callback URL of a relying party portal, right? Now, with that authorization code that is coming through this redirect URI, relying party can exchange this authorization code to get the user information. So it means that once the end user is clicked on the sign in button in the login page. He's been taken to the eSignet portal. He provides his credential. He's successfully authenticated. And then he provides his consent. He'll be redirected back to the relying party portal with a grant. So we need a page to hold that grant, and that page should be capable of exchanging this grant with the access token and then fetch the user info with it. This is why we are developing the profile page. Zishan, I think we lost your
Hey,
screen. Or...
Mauli has
yeah,
raised her hands.
yeah.
Yes, Mauli.
I can't see the screen actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Um,
Also, I'm still not able to access the chat. However, I'm writing the questions down. So
Yeah, we'll have a Q&A session only where we can.
sure. Great.
My screen has been visible.
yes, it's visible now. Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
In
Okay,
between,
Maulana,
there's
I
some
think you're also
disturbance
able to
came
experience.
across as well.
Yeah, I can see that. Yes, thank you.
With that, we will come to the profile page development. It is also going to be a very simple page, which is going to display user information. But even before it gets the user information, obviously it has to exchange the authorization code with the authorization server, get the access token, and then with that, it has to get the user information. This is this process of exchanging the grant and getting the user information involves a client authentication. When I say client authentication, obviously a secret is involved there, or a set of credentials which needs to be kept secret is involved. It means that I cannot bring the secrets to the UI code. So which is actually making us create a backend application where we can have our credentials or the secret that we want to use for client authentication is kept safe, and it is only used from the backend service, and only the user information after the successful fetch of the user info is returned back to the UI. Okay, so in the user profile page, let's go back to the user profile page. So here we could see that in the use effect method, we are actually calling a method which will invoke the delegate endpoint, and this delegate endpoint is an endpoint that we have developed in our backend Python application, and the input to this delegate endpoint is the authorization code. Okay. Okay. So let's come to the backend application now. As I told you, this is completely written in Python, and the exchange of this authorization code to get the access token and fetching the user information is all done via an OIDC client library named auth-lib. You could see that we have imported that auth-lib library here. And using the auth-lib library is what? We are instantiating a session with the required parameters, right? Let's take a moment to look at those parameters. Parameters are line number 45, client ID, and we are passing private key here. And I'll tell you why we are using private key. Why not simple client ID and secret? And we are saying that the method of authentication, client authentication, is private key JWT, and we are passing redirect URI, grant type, and the response type here. So a client ID we understand because eSignet only supports confidential clients. It means that we should have a relying party should have a proper client ID to do all this, to carry out an OIDC flow. Private key, why are we using a private key here? There is also a reason, because in eSignet, any client who has an authorization code cannot simply exchange that with the access token. We will need them to authenticate themselves. When I say them, the client to authenticate and then only the authenticated clients will be able to exchange the authorization code. And this type of authentication that we do is private key JWT based authentication, which involves a key pair to be generated by the relying party. So when I say relying party is generating the key pair, he will be the owner of the key pair, basically the private key. The private key that he generates should be kept in safe storage so that only he can access, or the relying party portals or backend service could access that private key, and it is not compromised. And the corresponding public key will be shared with the partner or the admin who is managing the eSignet service. Whichever eSignet deployment that your relying party is connecting to, there would be an admin who will be managing the partners or the client registrations in that eSignet service. So we will be so the relying party would be sharing the public key with that admin, so that admin takes care of registering the relying party with that public key and giving back a client ID to the relying party, right? So the private key that was generated by the relying party should be used here to sign a token, sign a JWT and send to the server. Server is eSignet server, and server will validate the signature with the public key that it is storing for your client ID. Only if the signature is matching, it will allow the token exchange to happen, right? So for all this, we need the relying party to have the private key, and this private key need to be very safe, and hence we are having a backend and hence we are showing that a relying party portal need to have a backend service. So these are the parameters that we have in this Python script, basically the client ID and the private key. Redirect URI, obviously, the redirect URI which was used during the authorize call from the sign-in button, it should be the same redirect URI that the relying party will use during the token exchange. Okay. With this, I think we are we have completed the login page, profile page development, and also we have seen what is part of our backend Python application, which is taking care of token exchange. Let's add the routes to our app.js, routes for our newly created pages. Zishan, I think we again lost the screen.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes. Okay, let's add the routes in the app.js. So we'll be adding two routes, one for the login page, the other one for the profile page. Okay, so now with this, I think we have completed our first milestone of creating the relying party, simple relying party portal. So although we are done with the relying party portal, we have not configured our relying party portal with a valid client ID, right? So let's move on to our Postman collection, with which we can register an OIDC client with a locally running eSignet service. As I've already told it before, locally running eSignet service is running with a mock identity system. So it means that it is a straightforward way of doing a client registration, but it will not be the case in the real-time scenario where eSignet is integrated with the MOSIP, because MOSIP has its own partner management system where the client registration should go via the partner management system, right? Whereas here it is a simple one endpoint invocation for client registration, OIDC client registration. So there you can see that we are invoking localhost 8088, where our eSignet service is hosted. Even before invoking this endpoint, let's take a moment to see what are the parameters we are passing in this endpoint. We are passing, I'll only go over the important parameters here. Client name. Client name is a name of the relying party portal, or what is the name that relying party wants to display to the end user when the end user comes to the eSignet portal, right? Which would clearly say that so and so relying party is asking for these claims from eSignet about the logged in end user. So what is the name that you want to show to the end user? That is a client name. Public key, as I've already explained, eSignet uses private key JWT, which is the RFC 7523 based client authentication. Hence, we need a public key to be used during the client registration, corresponding public key. Okay, it's an RSA key pair, so obviously the RSA private key will stay with the relying party, and the public key will be used during the client registration. User claims. So these are the standard OIDC user claims that a relying party could register for. He can actually register for all the claims, and when he is requesting, he can actually request for a subset of it, or he can, by registering itself, he could register for a subset of it. So it is completely left to the relying party's interest. Next parameter is auth context reference. As the name suggests, it is telling about the required assurance level that a relying party is looking for. If a relying party is providing a service of high assurance, which needs a high assurance about the end user who is using the service, obviously he will go with a biometric based authentication. If it is a very low end service, he could simply go with a password based or static code, or even a generated code based ACR values. So all the supported ACR values could be found in our OpenID configuration well-known endpoint, which we were initially showing in our eSignet UI homepage, right? With that discovery or with that well-known endpoint, one can know what are the supported ACR values in that deployed eSignet service. Logo URI. So this is a URL which will be used to render relying party logo in our eSignet screen, eSignet login page, as well as in the consent page of eSignet. A redirect URI. Redirect URIs, here it is a little important that you guys give a little bit of attention. Any relying party could register with absolute URLs or URLs with patterns, right? For example, let's say a relying party is very clear what is a callback URL that he will be using. In that case, it is very easy that you can give the absolute URL, right, without any patterns. But there might be some cases where relying party wants to generate his URL dynamically based on the service chosen by the end user. In that case, it might be difficult for them to give a redirect URI with which during the registration, client registration. So there we support a pattern-based URL where the context or the path of the URL can be a pattern, can be simply a star saying that it can match anything. Whereas the protocol and the domain name cannot be patternized. It's only the context and the path which can be replaced with the patterns. So I think I have explained all about the OIDC client management endpoint. Let's create an OIDC client. So once we have created an OIDC client, we will get a client ID, an active client ID. The places we need to replace the client ID is in the login page.gs and also in the backend application. Let's also take care of changing the redirect URI here in this OIDC config. It should point to our user profile page that we have just now created. Also note that relying party portal that we have just now built will be hosted on port number 5000. Authorized URL will be localhost 3000 basically, because eSignet UI is running on 3000 port. Yeah. Okay. And okay. So as I was telling about this private key, I also mentioned about a point where relying party will be generating the key pair. But here, what we have done is because we are using a postman. Postman is taking care of generating a key pair, and the corresponding private key will be stored in the environment with client underscore private underscore key param name. So we will be copying the same private key here in the backend. This is just for the demo that we are hard coding the private key in this application, but this is not the suggested way. We would always suggest to store the private keys in a safe storage. Okay, so I think we are almost done with the relying party portal development and also the backend development. Let's start the backend service, which is a Python application. Yeah. And we will also be starting our relying party portal. Okay, so in the meantime, I will also take, I would also like to mention about end user, right? What we saw till now is creation of a relying party portal, starting the eSignet service, which is authorization server, registering the relying party as a proper OIDC client in the authorization server, which is nothing but the eSignet. But where is the end user? We need to create an end user, right? So we are using a mock identity system. Obviously, we should create an end user in the mock identity system now. The Postman collection that we were showcasing previously also has an endpoint, which is an endpoint of the mock identity system itself, which is running on port number 8082. So in this endpoint, you can see that we are trying to create an individual by name Zishan with all his details, with photo, with all the possible demographic details that we have. So let's create this user. Okay. Let's use the same individual ID with which we have created the end user just now and try to log in. Please notice the logo URL and, and the individual ID that we have just now created will be used to log in. Because we have given the ACR value as generated code, we are prompted to enter the OTP, basically to follow the OTP based authentication. Once clicking on verify, on successful authentication, we will be taken to this consent screen. Here you can see the logo as well as the client name that we had just created the client ID for, right? And also list of claims which the relying party has requested about the end user. All of them are voluntary claims, but relying party could choose what is voluntary and what is essential. So he has a claims parameter with which he can actually specify this. I think we'll take you through those parameters later. Yeah, let's allow yes. So this completes the whole OIDC flow where um, end user came to the login page. He clicked on the button which redirected the end user to the eSignet portal. In the eSignet portal, end user entered his individual ID, authenticated himself, came to the consent screen. He gave his consent of sharing the details with the relying party portal. Once he shared his consent, we redirected back the user to the user profile page with the code, which is nothing but the authorization code. And this page was configured to call the backend Python application with this code to exchange the code for the access token and fetch the user information. The user information that was fetched is getting displayed on this profile page. I think what we had planned for the workshop, we have done with it. But I would also like to mention about one point. User information that you saw on the user profile page is so simple, but actually what eSignet returns back in the user info endpoint is a signed JWT. Let's go to that code, Zishan. Yeah, it's a signed JWT. What we are doing is actually relying party could verify the signature using the hosted public key from our well-known endpoints. And after verification, only he can choose to decode the payload, and the payload is actually a JSON. And this JSON is constructed based on the OIDC protocols. User relying party could choose to ask for claims in single language or multiple languages. There are options for it in the standard itself. using the claim locally query parameter. But here, for a simplicity, we have only chosen single language user claims. Okay. So whatever you saw in the profile page was actually the decoded payload. Yeah, with that, I think we were happy to show you this integration. Over to you, Rachik.
Yeah, thanks Anusha and Zishan for that insightful session. As you all saw, it just takes literally few minutes to integrate eSignet with any portal, and that's how easy it is to use eSignet. Although there is a lot more, and we'll try to give you some more insights before moving to the Q&A session. So, Anusa, Jishan, and Arvind, I'd like to ask you a few questions which might help us give more insights into the eSignet for our participants. So, Anusha, since you were talking about the auth factors during the session, in case if I want to enforce a biometric authentications, can you, can we achieve that? And if yes, how can we do that? Can you take us through the details of that?
Sure, sure. It is possible. So let's go to that login .js file where we were configuring the ACR values in the button, right? OIDC config parameter of the button, which we only gave the generated code as one of the value, but actually this ACR value takes a space separated list of values. You can give more than one values or just one. When you give one, it is like you're enforcing the user to use only that authentication factor. But when you give multiple, you are given an option to the end user to choose one among them, right? So this is one way where you can enforce a particular authentication factor. Such
Yeah, thanks, Anusha. And Anusha, since we are on the since we are talking about this auth factors, can you also take us through some of the parameters that we have in the authorized endpoint that can be used to customize the response?
Sure. Okay, I think it's better we go to the eSignet docs, right? So there we have actually documented all the possible parameters, or sorry, all the supported parameters from eSignet service. I think it is under integration guides, relying party. Yeah, section. We must be having a section called authorization endpoint. Yes, yeah, correct. Could you open that record? Okay. So, okay. I'll try to go one by one, or might be the ones which are actually required by the relying party to tweak how the eSignet renders the claims or shows the login page. Okay. Uh, Scope, we have uh, three standard scopes that is currently supported. Actually, eSignet could be configured to support more scopes, but currently, as a default, we only support OpenID, profile, email, and phone. OpenID is a standard scope that is required to differentiate between OAuth and OIDC. So OpenID is always there. Profile and email and phone is more of telling what are the claims that the relying party is interested in. So this is one query parameter with which relying party could request for the claims. Otherwise, if he needs a very fine-grained way of asking for a particular claim, which is essential and which is not essential, then it will be the claims parameter that the relying party could use. Otherwise, it is if it is just that he needs everything to be voluntary claims, then he can simply go with a scope-based ask, right? Scope-based way of requesting the claims. Client ID, as I told you, it's a registered client ID, which is an output at the end of the client registration. Redirect URI, I think I've already explained. It is the same thing. And the state and nonce are kind of security measures, way with which we can mitigate a couple of attacks, right? So we always encourage relying parties to use state and nonce. UI localize, It is basically the language in which the eSignet portal should render. For example, let's say relying party was rendering its whole website or its portal in might be French language, and when user is navigating from relying party portal, which is rendered in French, to eSignet portal, and if he wants the eSignet portal also to switch to French, right? In those cases, relying party could use UI locally. So you can simply pass the UI locally with the desired language code. Um, Here, it also depends what language bundles that are available in eSignet UI, right? If we do not have the requested UI language bundle, we simply fall back to the default language, which is currently English. So every deployment of eSignet could be changed, could be added with a new bundles. So that is a straightforward way. There is no code change required. You just have to simply provide a URL from where I can download the I18 bundle, right? So that eSignet service will unzip it and load that I18 bundle. ACR values, I think I've already gone through the ACR values. Let's scroll down. Claim localize also I've gone through. It is the language with in which claims are required by the relying party. There can be more than one claim, one language that you can request with, or multiple languages. Again, it's a space separated list of language codes. Uh, Claims. I think claims is a more grained way of asking for a claim, and relying party could clearly say which is an essential claim and which is not an essential claim. That level of that level of uh, request could be sent with this claims parameter. Code challenge and code challenge method. I think from starting from 140 of eSignet, we have started this Pixie support, which is nothing but RFC 7636 support in eSignet, right? Which is a way to avoid authorization code theft. We are almost safe because we only support confidential clients, but this is an add-on security that is present in eSignet.
Yeah. Thanks, Anisha. That was some useful information. Moving on, there is one more question that might come up as we were using user info for verification and authentication. So, Arvind, can you give a brief overview of whether eSignet stores any user data during the user verification and authentication process, and how does it work?
Sure, Rajik. So in the overall process, we don't store the user info or anything related to an data. So we just purely exchange the data with the client, and then will get authenticated, and throughout the progress our channel is secured. So it's an pure verification channel, I can say. The token and the data, everything is an digitally signatured. So yes, we don't capture the data in the eSignet throughout the process, Rachik.
So it
Yeah.
is not persistent. So the signed data that is written from the identity system is cached for that time till the access token is valid, right? After that, it is forgotten. So we don't tamper or we don't change any data, but the signed data is cached so that we don't repeatedly call or hit the identity system. And Rachik, I think there's a question which we can take from Loganathan. Yes.
Okay. Uh, Fine. With that, we'll move to the Q&A session. So I have a question here. Uh, how is eSignet connected to the authentication server in the demo, and how to configure that? Anisha, you want to take that?
Yeah. I think we can show that with our Docker Compose file. If we can show our Docker Compose file, I'll just take a moment. Let's go into the GitHub itself and show the Docker Compose file there. So in the okay, eSignet is plugin based. To answer your question, first of all, right? So it depends. So let's say we are connecting here in this example. Let's take we have a mock identity system running, right? And we need our eSignet to connect with the mock identity system, and this is enabled via a plugin. So you could see that in line number 35, we have configured the plugin name to be eSignet mock plugin.jar. So basically, um, we have a defined set of interfaces for which we will expect an implementation to be written. And this implementation will depend on the identity system uh, that you want to connect, you want eSignet to connect with. Okay, so if that implementation is ready, then it is just the matter of loading that jar file into eSignet's class path and providing the required configuration and starting up the eSignet. So for the mock identity system itself, we have already created a plugin, and MOSIP identity system also we have a plugin written, and I think we also have a plugin written for Sunbird registry kind of ID system. So for these three, we already have a plugins written and kept. Um, More information on these interfaces you could find on our eSignet docs, or you could directly get into our eSignet repo, and you can actually go over eSignet integration hyphen API project in our eSignet repo, which is defining all these interfaces. Loganathan, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, Manoj, you can go ahead with the questions.
Yeah, actually, I mean, this is a question on top of it. Like when you put the plugin name environment as a jar, is there like a technology locking over there? Like we have to provide the jar file only. How it is the plugin is jar file, right? I mean, how it is linked there. Only
Okay.
it accepts the jar files.
Uh, Currently, yes. It is a Spring. Our eSignet is developed using Spring Boot, Spring
Yeah,
framework
yeah, I
basically,
understand that.
right?
Yes,
So,
yes. Yeah,
hence, all our plugins will be a jar file or class files that we'll have to have in our class path to load uh,
gotcha.
and
Yeah.
to connect with the required identity system.
Mm. Yeah.
I'll add up into that. So, um, the plugin is just a basic interface. You can actually move in all your uh, complex logic into, for example, if you are a Python developer, you could build a Python code which deals with all the problem. But the plugin is just an interface to pass from here to any of your code. So you could back and use a Kafka to connect, or you could call another HTTP API from this plugin. So you're allowed to do all of that. There is no restriction on that. But this is just a very small interface that lets you speak between our system and anything that you want to do.
Understand. Yeah. So yeah, in the beginning when you were just giving the demo, you're talking about the button library, right? So in the library, you're passing the button styles and everything in the configuration. So where if I want to have the custom themes for that button, is it possible as of now, like to pass any custom styles to the button, or I mean, we have to pass that is only available, which is there in the library?
I'll
Good
take up this
question.
question.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
you are always allowed to change any of the themes, or you can keep adding the colorings. And if you want to like change the layout, everything is possible. As the screen shared, you may see multiple types and the themes, which is readily available for you. If you like to add on top of that, yes, you are allowed as a freehand.
Uh,
You
for,
can.
for that one, do I have to make any changes on the like eSignet level?
It's in the mock relying party level, not in the eSignet level. It's a library which you are going to build or the code.
So, okay, can you click on that standard button with custom design tab? Yeah. Let's show this code there. Let's click on show code for this button. Yeah, Zishan, I think you can go ahead.
Yeah, I understand. Yes, that's what I was asking. Yes.
Yeah.
Maulali, actually, the thing is, there are configuration, okay, like type, theme, shape. These are the values. Means apart from that, you
Mm-hmm.
can't send anything. So you can change it. Some outline, some orange color, some filled black color, and some other class you pass it. Shapes are there, sharp edges, soft edges, and rounded edges, and like that. The label text, the logo path, whatever you want to send it, you can send it up. Apart from that, there are some custom style. Okay, means apart
Mm-hmm.
from this background color, text color, border width, font family, other things. Apart from that, there is custom style. In custom styles, you can pass multiple of things. We have given some of the design for the label, for the logo image, and for the outer div style system. So if you properly give it all the design, it will look like this. It is totally custom made. By default,
Understand.
we are giving it like this, or even like this, an icon type of button. But you can
Mm-hmm.
make it
Mm-hmm.
like this way also. You can pass your custom logo. You can pass your custom a design, the label name, and all those things. Any minute padding, margin, anything, particular font size you want, particular font family you want, you can pass it on from this custom
Definitely,
style.
I understand. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is very simple in where it is. So you can send it up in this button config as we configure here. You can pass it in the button config and you
Yeah.
are good to go. Nothing has to be changed or something like only this in the relying party UI you have to change.
Yes, exactly. So, if anything custom that we want to add, we can have, we have to pass it from here. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have another question. Maybe Anusha might have already answered that about the OTP services. That works as a plugin, right? Like we can have a different OTP providers.
Um, so, if you're asking specifically with mock identity system, Olali, or is it with MOSIP identity system?
Okay, the OTP would be generated by the identity system, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
okay, then
eSignet
that would
will
be
is
in the
not responsible of generating the OTP. We have an interface method. In that interface method, when the plugin implements it, can decide which OTP manager it wants to use. Right? It is completely left to the plugin implementation. It could use our MOSIP OTP manager, or it could also use an external OTP manager.
okay.
Anusha,
I'm a bit confused here.
in bit in your voice has been cut out actually. I think there's a network issue.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
Maulali, was that?
yeah, I was a bit confused. Okay, for example, let me take a scenario
Mm-hmm.
of uh, okay, I have MOSIP framework setup, like ID system setup. Now I have a profile registered over there. A citizen registered himself, and he has got an ID. Now I want to integrate that with MOSIP. I have integrated, for example, let's say that eSignet with MOSIP. Now when I click on login, uh, that like there are three things actually: MOSIP, eSignet, and then the relying party. Right? These three are
Hmm.
there.
Right.
The
Mm-hmm.
so the OTP thing would be under the control of MOSIP,
You're right.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's one more question. Maybe I might have missed it. Um, so when we get some data back from the MOSIP system, we are already passing the private keys there to encrypt it, right?
Um,
Uh, now
okay.
how, I mean, my whole
Hmm.
question is something like how we are validating the data if it is authentic. I mean, how we are checking the authenticity of it.
Okay. Uh, where is where are you expecting this authenticity check to happen?
Um, like when it reaches to the end of the relying party, or if the relying party is depending completely on eSignet also.
Okay. So okay. If you're asking about how eSignet is trusting it, eSignet is trusting it because eSignet is integrating with that trusted identity system. That is one thing, right? And and the trust between because it is being trusted and it has been integrated with that MOSIP let's take the MOSIP identity system itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the user info that is given back to the eSignet after successful authentication of end user is is actually a signed data. It's a signed
Yeah,
JWT,
signed.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
It means
Mm-hmm.
that uh, the the authenticity is claimed is actually cannot be tampered. First of all, it cannot be tampered by eSignet. If it tampers, then the same tampered data cannot be given back to the relying party because the authenticity check in the relying party would fail because relying party would be verifying that JWT token. Only then it will be consuming that user information, right?
Yeah,
That
that
is
that
first thing.
control should be on the relying party. That is one
Yes,
part. Yes.
that is one part. Second part, so on the eSignet side itself, uh, it is it is already the trust that we have already built, right? With the plugin and when it is getting integrated, right? So it is it is nowhere that we will be tampering the data, and we would have already integrated with that ID system with that same trust. And because that trust is there, eSignet is integrated with that ID system. Um, I hope that answers. Or Sasi, is there anything that I have missed, or anything you would like to add here?
No, I'm just thinking actually. Uh,
But final authenticity check is completely in relying party portal where it should check verify the signature and then consume the user information in the payload.
yeah, but because it is transferring via eSignet, right? It is coming
Yes.
from MOSIP, and for example, it is coming from MOSIP ID system
Hmm.
and reaches to the relying party via the
Hmm.
eSignet. So it has one more layer in between. So I understand we say that we don't tamper it, but how we so the relying party would check it with the signed certificates. That is what you
Right.
mean. That
Correct.
is what
One
you're
point
saying.
here it is, yes,
Mm.
signed the signature. Who is doing the signing is the identity system itself. So eSignet is just taking a role of relaying that signed information to the relying party, but the owner of the data is still the identity system. And because he is the owner, he is the one who is signing the data, and the certificate with which or the public key with which the relying party will be verifying is actually the public key of identity system, not the eSignet's
Yes, exactly.
public. Yeah.
So yeah, now the question that comes is like how the see eSignet can have a hundred things there, like the it might have integrated with 100 identity systems, identity ways, right? So now when the relying party is integrating eSignet, it is in his control to choose one of the identity system. That is one part. When he chooses, for example, the MOSIP, when he want to have that, now how he gets that a public key certificate? He has so MOSIP does not know anything about this relying party, and relying party does not know anything about MOSIP. Is that the way, or
No, MOSIP does know about the relying party because
Okay.
the relying party would have. Sorry, Sophie, you want to take it?
Yeah, yeah. So, Maulik, it depends on how you're doing it. So from an e-signals perspective, there is an identity system behind the scene, which is if it has to know, then we inform. If it doesn't need to know, then it's perfectly fine. So it's how each ID system that you think about will have a different way in which we would do so, because we do encounter a situation where people would have all data in a database, but they have never done an online API and they want to use eSignet. So in that case, it's not going to be a very intelligent solution behind the scenes. So they would not know anything about relying party and others. It's all eSignet which knows and handles the trust. There are
So
cases like MOSIP, for example, knows everything in detail. So it would then expect MOSIP is giving you all that. The flexibility for that lies in the plugin for you. When you design the plugin, you choose how you want things based on your current situation.
Understand. So the already the certificate exchange have already happened before even integrated with
Yes.
eSignet. That
Yes.
is what it.
Yes.
Yeah. So the MOSIP will sign it with public key of the relying party, and the relying party will validate it with its private key. That is what it is, right?
No. So MOSIP will sign it with its private key, and the
Yeah, the
public key of the
private key.
MOSIP,
Yeah,
MOSIP will be
will be
hosted
available
on
there.
our eSignet jwks.json well-known endpoint. So we showed those well-known endpoints, right, Maulali, in the beginning. One of them is a jwks.json file, JSON endpoint, which actually lists the public key of MOSIP or whoever is a signer, identity system signer, right?
Yes.
So with that keys, you'll be able to verify the user info JWT, signed JWT.
So that happens on the eSignet level, right?
Relying
Or on
party.
the relying party level.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I'm just trying to digest the new system. So yeah, there are questions arising. Maybe I might want to try that someday, and might come back with uh, if there is any clarity needed.
Yeah, sure, Malali, you can reach out to us.
Yep. I met Anusha in Ethiopia.
Yeah. Yes.
So yes, that's it from my end. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Malali, for your questions. I do not see any open questions as of now. Please feel free to ask your questions. We'll give it some time.
Okay, if there is no other question, should we go ahead?
Yeah. So yeah, sure. So as there are no further questions, we would like to conclude our today's session. Thank you all of us for joining. We hope that you found this session insightful and that it gave you a clearer understanding on implementation of eSignet. Please note the recording of this session will be soon available on our YouTube channel and MOSIP Create website. So keep an eye for the updates there. A special thank you to our speakers and experts for their contributions, and to our participants. Please don't hesitate, and if you feel like later you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us through our communication channels over Discord or Hackathon website or through our community forum. And also, don't miss out our upcoming live solution building session for ING that is scheduled for 28th October, 5 p.m. IST. You can find the details over MOSIP Create website and LinkedIn. Thank you again for joining. We look forward to see you in the next session.